Welcome back to your Need to Know News headquarters. Speaking of Need to Know News, John Nichols on the ground in Madison, Wisconsin, author for TheNation.com and Capital Times in Wisconsin, seventh generation Wisconsinite, the guy who knows it all. John, are you on the board of PD America along with me?
I am a huge fan of PD America. I don't know if I'm on the board. I think I don't join the board necessarily, not out of any disrespect, but I am someone who believes that PD America is a very, very necessary group because of its principles and the suggestion that the Democratic Party might want to stand for something.
That's Progressive Democrats of America, PDAmerica.org, Tim Carpenter's organization. I thought you were, I don't know, for whatever reason, when I saw you last time in Wisconsin, and I'd start introducing you that way. But whatever. I'm sorry. You have some news for us.
Yeah, I wanted to call in, Tom. And I don't usually want to abuse the wonderful privilege of being on your show, but I did think that the listeners, your listeners, would be very intrigued by the latest development, and I also thought that you would be very intrigued. The state Senate has just voted they created a new rule or a new law, something that's never existed before, and that is a provision for something called contempt of the Senate. They have just voted to hold the 14 Democratic senators in contempt of the Senate, and frankly, along with their takeover of the staff, they've now assigned all Democratic staffers to Republican senators. There is great concern, and I think we should be careful about this to say this is concern rather than something the Republicans have said they will do, that they're going to start firing staffers and also begin taking steps that might see the removal or an attempt to remove the Democratic senators from their seats, which would create probably the most severe state-based constitutional crisis we have seen since the Reconstruction era.
Well, it wouldn't be a constitutional crisis if the legislative branch did it to itself, would it?
No, except that our Constitution has an awfully lot of rules about how you're supposed to do these things. And it's what's happening is clearly a radical ramping up of the Republican assault on these Democratic state senators, an effort to really force them back. And this contempt of the Senate decision, which is, again, a rule that never existed before that any lawyer for the state can identify, is something that I think we're really moving toward probably a critical stage here where the Democratic senators themselves are going to have to make some fundamental decisions about whether they allow their constituents to be totally disenfranchised.
So their staffers have been taken over and assigned to Republicans, these 14 Democrats. They may be
49 staffers. 49 staffers have been assigned to Republican senators now.
They may be fired.
They run the risk because they are now supervised, and I've talked to staffers today. They are now supervised by members of the Republican majority. They have to report to specific Republican senators.
Now, how
tell
does
them what to do?
Okay, and so if the Republicans who control the Wisconsin Senate decide to hold these 14 members of the Senate who have left the state to deny them a quorum on budget issues, if they decide to hold them in contempt of the Senate, what exactly happens?
Well, we're in uncharted waters here, Tom. And I've asked a number of lawyers, what does this mean? And of course, this is something new. It's not happened before.
Are you implying that they get unseated, that they're no longer senators?
What's that? Yeah. Well, here's the situation. If you are held in contempt of the Senate, in contempt of a body,
right?
At a certain point, you now have developed a charge, a complaint. This is a lawyer who was looking it over just in the last few minutes. Saying you've now developed an outline for a move to, in some way, disempower the Democrats, to actually say that they're no longer serving, or they are no longer serving in an appropriate manner with respect for the body, things of that nature. And the statements from the majority leader of the state Senate, who's the guy in charge, have been incredibly aggressive today. He has said that the Democrats have created, quote unquote, as we just discussed, this notion, a constitutional crisis. They have pushed the state over the edge. He's clearly suggesting that that we've reached a point where something big has to happen.
Okay.
And my sense is, I'm just saying to you, my sense is that we're reaching a point where in the next, it could be the next few hours, certainly the next day, where this is going to reach some kind of critical mass that we haven't been at before.
If they can basically unseat these guys, if they can say they're no longer considered members of the Senate because they're in contempt, then that might collapse the necessary number of people for a quorum, right?
Absolutely, it would. You would, the quorum is based on a percentage of sitting members.
Right.
And
so if you decrease the number of sitting members, you decrease the quorum. So that's one way to get around this. I understand. I was talking earlier to one of these spokespeople for the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, the Graham Zielinski. You probably know Zam, the communications director. Sure. And he was talking about, unseattherepublican8.com, this effort, and that if they're successful in unseating these 8 or even 3 of these 8 Republicans, if they can do this before June, and this would be done by June because that's when it would have to be done, the budget process by constitutional mandate doesn't have to be finished until the end of June, which means that they could change the composition of the Senate and stop the disenfranchisement of the unions in the state.
Well, technically, here's the situation. The disenfranchisement of the unions is part of a budget repair bill. That bill exists under the current budget.
Right.
The budget session, which goes till June 30, is about writing the new budget.
Right.
But what they could do, and this is very, very significant, if you were to unseat those 3 Republicans and have a Democratic majority, then the governor to pass his budget for the coming years, would have to begin to negotiate with the Democratic Senate. Obviously, as a part of that negotiation, you could see a restoration of collective bargaining rights, which only requires, it simply requires the vote of the Senate and the Assembly. And if the governor wanted to pass his broader budget, and that was the core Democratic demand, yes, you could see within this process a restoration of collective bargaining.
Now, what happens if the governor passes? Let's say that they somehow kick out these 14 Democrats through this contempt of the Senate.
Which I don't think would stand in the courts if it was attempted.
Right. No, this is all hypothetical right now. But let's say that they kick out these 14 guys. They now have a quorum. They pass the budget bill. Y'all can come back later, or they can, if they can unseat 3 Republicans, they can come back later and they can fix the budget bill and they can restore collective bargaining rights. But what if in the meantime, all the power plants in the state have been sold to the Koch brothers? Do they get unsold?
Well, that's the problem. And what if we see the consolidation of authority over our Medicare, Medicaid, Badger Care, and senior care programs in the governor's office, and as a emergency cost-cutting move, he determines to change the rules, which has been suggested, in a way that would allow or force as many as 100,000 low-income Wisconsinites out of medical care,
right?
Away from. You see, fundamental changes in people's lives, in life and death decisions, might be made. And here's the crux of the matter. I don't think that the Republicans are going to succeed in throwing the Democrats out. I think you'd get a judge to toss that in a minute. But I do think that what we're getting to here is something that you've written about and understood so well, that there's the law, there's the Constitution, but then there's also the media game, the abuse of power to communicate a false message. I think that's what the Republicans are really stepping toward here.
So this is the messaging war.
I think it is.
These guys are in contempt of Congress. I get it. Okay.
You got it.
John Nichols, The Nation. Well, don't forget, Scott Walker, Koch's Poodle.